Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to a brand new podcast in which we discuss Denver sporting news, we break down the games, and we talk about what's to come for the teams we love. This is the Denver Dollar, and I am your host, Daniel Shalansky. Now, without further ado, let's get to it. So the date today is January 17th, and the Nuggets play tonight against the Utah Jazz at home. The game is set for 6 p.m. Mountain Time or 8 p.m. Eastern Time, but as we all know, the games start a little bit later. You'll be able to get your bets in through 6:10 p.m. Mountain Time and 8:10 p.m. Eastern Time. Let's talk about some notes that we have going into the game. So, notable injuries for the Nuggets include Michael Porter Jr. yet again. He tested positive for COVID a little bit ago after already being in the COVID protocols, so he's out for health and safety reasons. However, he is able to make a return, or at least this is expected. He's expected to make a return as of the game on next Friday. He is the only notable absence for the Nuggets. On the Jazz side of the ball, they will be without Joe Ingles as he's dealing with Achilles soreness. So while he's not necessarily dealing with the Achilles injury that we all dread so much as NBA fans, he does have soreness in his Achilles, so he's going to rest that just to play it extra safe. Juwan Morgan is also out due to health and safety protocols, due to COVID close contacts. He didn't necessarily test positive, but he was a close contact. In addition to that, Derek Favors is probable in this game at backup center with a right knee injury. That means for the Nuggets, the expected starting lineup is Jamal Murray, Gary Harris, who is he made a return last game. He had a brief absence, but Gary Harris is back in the lineup. Will Barton, Paul Millsap, and Nikola Jokic at center. The starting lineup for the Jazz include the backcourt combo of Don and Con, Donovan Mitchell and Mike Conley. The forwards will be Bojan Bogdanovic and Royce O'Neal, and at center they have the Stifle Tower Rudy Gobert. Let's talk about some of the numbers in this game. The Jazz are favorited despite the game being in Denver, and perhaps that is due to their hot streak. They've won 3 out of their last 3 games, and they're 8-4 on the season. They're sitting nice and pretty up high in the Western Conference standings. The Nuggets have won 2 out of their last 3, but are overall 6-6 on the season. The Jazz enter as favorites with the money line being locked in at minus 114 for the Jazz and minus 106 for the Nuggets. In this game, I do like the Jazz due to the fact that they are playing exceptionally well, and in addition to that, they are, if you're a narrative type bettor and you buy into some narratives, they're going to be hungry. They're definitely upset with how they lost in the playoffs last year to the Denver Nuggets. The Nuggets came down from 3-1 in that series after taking the first game. So it was, kind of a game of runs. The Nuggets won first, the Jazz went on a run of 3 games, then the Nuggets went on a run of 3 games. The Jazz are upset with themselves. They've been looking to kind of revamp their roster and, come out even stronger than they did last year, and they are hungry for this win specifically. I like the Jazz even though it is a very close spread. It's a very close money line. It's going to be a close game. The spread for the Jazz is -1, whereas for the Nuggets it's +1. The Nuggets at +1 are locked in at minus 112, and the Jazz at -1 are locked in at minus 109. Considering the fact that most NBA games do not go into overtime, this is like as close of a spread as you can get. With the final difference of their scores being at least 1 point, then you're pushing. But you can expect most NBA games to be, the difference to be a larger margin than 1 point. So, in this game, I actually like some teasers. I'm going to talk about teasers for both teams because, well, I did say I like the Jazz in the money line. It is fairly difficult to, with confidence, say who's going to win this game. But if you bet on the Jazz minus 2.5 at plus 108, it's much more likely that if the Jazz win, they're going to win by at least a margin of 3 points versus a margin of 1 point. I mean, of the Jazz's 12 games this season, none of them have been within a 1 point margin. And for the Nuggets, they've had a few games go into overtime, but same boats for them. None of their games have been by a 1 point margin. One of their games was a 2-point game. That was the season opener against the Kings, in which there was that very disappointing buzzer beater by Buddy Hield. But you can't expect it to be a 1-point game. I like a teaser here, considering how close these are. So as far as I'm willing to go, considering the fact that I'm not very confident in predicting who's going to win, despite the fact that, like I said, I like the Jazz money line, I'm willing to buy 1.5 points. I like the Jazz at minus 2.5 for plus 108. That's versus minus 109 with the original money line. Looking at the Nuggets, I like the Nuggets minus 2.5 as well, because if they do win, it is sure to be by a margin of at least 3 points. And you're looking at plus 116 versus minus 112 for the other money line for the Nuggets. I think those are relatively safe teasers. You're only increasing your odds, you're only increasing your payout by a little bit, but it's absolutely worth it considering the fact that the game is much likely to be a larger point differential than 1 point. Now let's talk about the over-under in this game. The over-under is set at 219.5 points, with the over being locked in at minus 112 and the under being locked in at minus 109. I personally like the under, and let me tell you why. Both teams, if you combine their aggregate averages on the season, it is under that mark of 219.5. The Nuggets are averaging 116.3, and the Jazz are only averaging 110.7. Well, the Nuggets aren't necessarily good on defense. In fact, they're allowing 112.8 points per game. That ranks them at number 21 in the league. You can expect a slightly higher uptick for the Jazz than 110.7. But the Jazz are absolutely stifling on defense this season. In terms of allowed points per game, they are ranked number 4 in the league, allowing only 105.4 points per game. Well, I do expect the Jazz to score a little bit more than their season average of 110.7, considering how atrocious the Nuggets defense has been. I would expect the Nuggets not to quite get to that average mark of 116.3, considering the fact that the Jazz are so good on defense. Now, another number that helps us make this decision to lean towards the under is the fact that in the last 5 games, the Nuggets have only reached this mark of 219.5 points in 2 out of their last 5 games. That's 40%, and they've played against worse defenses than the Jazz. Now, if you look at the Jazz's last 5 games, they've only combined for 219.5 points alongside, with a combined score of their opponents in only 1 out of their last 5 games. I think we can bet the under, and I think we can be fairly confident at that. Not only that, you're getting slightly better odds at minus 109 for the under versus minus 112 for the over. Because the Nuggets, despite the fact that they've only hit that mark in 2 out of their last 5 games, they have exceeded the over in more games than not in terms of the over under on their card. So I'm not necessarily willing to buy a teaser. We've seen the Nuggets be kind of sluggish from shooting the ball. Jamal Murray was 1 of 8 from the 3-point line in his last game. They are looking pretty cold. But if they are able to regress to their season averages in terms of shooting, or not their season averages, in terms of what we know these players can do, if they're able to regress to some of what we've seen throughout these Nuggets players' careers, then we could potentially expect a higher number than 219.5. That's why I'm not necessarily willing to buy a teaser. I do think it will be the under, but there are a litany of things that could happen that we couldn't necessarily predict. There are a lot of things that could happen with outside of the game script that we expect that could lead to the over. So I'm not willing to buy any teasers there. Now, because we are fairly confident in the under, there are some parlays I like pertinent to the under. Now, because the Jazz are favorites, but they're only favorited by a point spread of 1 point, I think we can expect them to exceed that spread of minus 1 point if they are to win this game. That is why I like 2 parlays, and you can even take both of these if you want. I like the Jazz against the spread of minus 1 in tandem with the under. You're locked in at plus 260 if you do that. But like I said, we don't necessarily know who will win, and it's tough to be confident in making a prediction as to who will win. So we can also take the Nuggets in the money line, because you're getting better odds with the money line at minus 106 versus the spread at minus 112. You can bet the Nuggets money line in tandem with the under as well for plus 270. If you bet both of those, obviously they're mutually exclusive. Only one of those teams can win, or only one of those bets can hit, except for considering the fact that one of them is plus 260 and the other one is plus 270. We can feel pretty good about the fact that we will be in the money if one of them hits. It will totally outweigh the other one, and they're both good bets here. Looking at total points for the individual teams, the Nuggets are locked in at 109.5, with the over being locked in at minus 118, the under being locked in at minus 110. The Jazz are looking at 110.5 points in this game, with the over being set at minus 107 and the under being set at minus 121. Now, if we do some quick math and we look at the implied point total in this game, with the over-under being set at 219, if you divide that by 2, we're looking at 109.75 points for each team. But then if you factor in the spread, you add the spread in this game is a difference of 1 point. So if you add 0.5 to the Jazz, that's half of the spread, you're looking at an implied point total of 110.25 points. For the Nuggets, if you subtract half a point, you're looking at 109.25 points. That doesn't necessarily tell us anything here, actually, considering the fact that those decimals, it doesn't matter if you round, those numbers are exactly in between 100 and 109 and 110 for the Nuggets and 110 and 111 for the Jazz, and that is the exact same as the total points. So the implied point total doesn't tell us much here. But let's just talk about what we think about the point totals. The Nuggets at are at 109.5. Well, we do think the under will hit in this game. I do think that the Nuggets could potentially hit the under of 109.5, and you're getting better odds with minus 110. Like I said, the Jazz are absolutely stifling on defense, and the Nuggets they haven't necessarily been in such a cold streak. They've won 2 out of their last 3, and a lot of them were in very high-scoring fashion. They have not played against good defenses. Looking at the Jazz locked in at 110.5, I like the over for them. Not only are you getting better odds with the over at minus 107 versus minus 121, but we like the overall under in this game, and if the under is to hit and the Jazz are to win, we would expect the Nuggets to be way under that and the Jazz to just be a little bit under that mark of 110.5. Now, I always talk about it every show. Let's talk about the three-way money line. You should never bet on the normal money line. I know I brought it up, but that is one of the most popular bets among sports bettors, so it's worth a mention at the beginning of the show. In fact, I use the BetRivers stats. I use the BetRivers app to list my lines and to make, to list my values and tell you what I think you should bet. But the thing is, the most popular bet on the BetRivers app is always the spread, the over-under, and the money line. So that's why I cover it. But right now, I'm going to tell you why you should go away from the money line and you should bet on the three-way money line. I do this every show. The Jazz are locked in at plus 100 in the three-way money line, whereas the Nuggets are locked in at plus 108. That's way better than their normal money lines. The normal money line, the Jazz are locked in at minus 114, and the Nuggets are locked in at minus 106. So you're getting significantly better value there with the three-way money line. The only catch is that the game could go into overtime, and the money line only accounts for the game or the score through 4 quarters. So if the game goes into overtime, you are not going to win your bet if you bet on the Jazz or if you bet on the Nuggets and they are able to pull it out in overtime. Whereas with the normal money line, you would still get the money. The reason why I'm telling you to bet against overtime is because the overtime right now is listed at plus 1,400. That does mean, sure, if you bet $10, you're going to walk away with 150. You're going to have a net gain of plus $140. But the stats show that that is actually terrible value considering how likely games have been going into overtime this season. Approximately 1 out of every 18.6 games have gone into overtime throughout the course of this young NBA season. That means this value or this bet wouldn't be worth taking unless it was at plus 1,860, but it's only plus 1,400. So the value is not remotely there for the tie because the tie is considered much more likely than it should be in the three-way money line. That means the other bets are going to be a little bit inflated in terms of your payout. Even though I would normally bet or tell you to bet against overtime, you're going to get even better value than you should with overtime considered in the three-way money line, considering the fact that throughout the season, overtime has been considered way too likely to happen. Now, in terms of double chance betting, that means you within the three-way money line, you bet on 2 of them to happen, and your odds are significantly decreased. For example, you can bet on the Jazz to win through 4 quarters or overtime. That means you're locked in at minus 136. That's terrible because with the normal Jazz spread, you're looking at minus 114, and that's the exact same thing pretty much. That's, except for the fact that the Nuggets could pull it out in overtime. But how likely is the game to go into overtime even, and how likely is it to even say which team will win if the game does go into overtime? I hate that bet. I always hate a double chance bet. You're significantly reducing your value. Another one, for example, is if you bet on the Nuggets plus overtime at the end of 4 quarters, you're locked in at minus 125. That's as compared to minus 100 or plus 108 for the normal money line. And the game's not going to go into overtime. You can always bet against overtime. In terms of if you bet on no tie and you're just betting on either a Jazz win or a Nuggets win, you're locked in at minus 3,335. That's terrible value considering the likelihood that we previously discussed of games to go into overtime this season. So what do I say about the double chance bet? Don't double chance it. Now let's dive into some individual player statistics. We're going to start with the entire Nuggets side of the ball. For whatever reason, Will Barton was not listed. Neither was Gary Harris. Perhaps it is due to Gary Harris's absence and the fact that Will Barton has been so inconsistent. It's really hard to pin any numbers on him, and maybe that is why the Bet Rivers card is staying away from him. But Jamal Murray, Paul Millsap, and Nikola Jokic are all reported on the betting card, so we can discuss all of their stats in totality. After that, we'll discuss Donovan Mitchell being the star on the Jazz's stats. We'll discuss everything that he has to offer in totality, and then we'll just talk about the other Jazz players and things that we like on the card rather than betting their entire stats. After we talk about these player individual stats, we'll talk about player specials, and then we'll finally finish the show with our tip-off analysis that we have had so much fun doing throughout this young NBA season. Now, Jamal Murray is projected 21.5 points in this game, with the over being locked in at plus 122, the under being locked in at minus 148. Now, I would think that he hits the under, but I don't like the value there. The reason I think he would hit the under is because he's only averaging 19.5 on the season. In addition to that, he's only averaging 15.3 over the last three. Jamal Murray's in a little bit of a cold slump, so we can expect the under, but I don't think the value is good enough there. If I had to bet, I would bet the under, but I would stay away from it considering the value. Now, one that I do like considering the value, even though it's pretty unlikely to happen, is Jamal Murray to get more than 4.5 assists. On the season, he's averaging 4.0 assists, and in the last three, he's averaging 4.3. So he's been very close to that mark, and he's only been, going up in terms of assists. While I don't think that he gets 4.5 assists in this game, the value is way better than the under at plus 125 versus minus 122. So I would normally stay away from this bet too, but the value could potentially be there at plus 125 for the over. Now, in terms of rebounds, I think he gets the under. He's also set at 4.5 for rebounds in this game. Now, he's only averaging 3.5 rebounds on the season, and over the last three games, he's only gotten 3 rebounds per game. So I would tell you normally to bet on the under, but minus 162, that is terrible value. You can confidently stay away from that. Now, here is one for Jamal Murray that I do in fact like. Earlier I said that he's been very cold from the 3-point line. He shot 1 of 8 in the previous game. On the season, he's only averaging 2.3 made three-pointers per game. In the last three, he's only averaging 1.3 made three-pointers per game. That means being locked in at 2.5 for his over-under in three-pointers, you can confidently bet the under. Sure, the value is not necessarily that good at minus 143, but that's better than it should be. That's better than it is reflected over the last 3 games and even on the season. That, well, we can be fairly confident that he won't hit 3 three-pointers in this game. Sure, it's a low reward, but we can be fairly confident it's good enough value for us to take that. Now let's discuss Paul Millsap starting at power forward for the Denver Nuggets in this game. He's set at 9.5 points in this game. For whatever reason, all the individual player stats or projected stats for Paul Millsap have been seriously broken throughout the season. He's averaging 10.9 on the season and 10.7 in the last 3. The reason why that's relevant to bring up is because you're getting better value with the over, betting over 9.5 points in this game at minus 104 versus minus 118. That's ridiculous. He's averaging more than that on the season. In addition, he's been averaging more than that over the past stretch of games, so they're not really buying into any trends as predicting why the under, might be more likely to happen. So you can confidently bet the over on Paul Millsap considering the fact that the value is better than the under. It's really good there. One for Paul Millsap that I would stay away from is his rebounds. He's only averaging 3.1 on the season, but that's been trending up as of late. He's averaging 4.3 over the last 3 games, and in this game he's set at 4.5. Well, we would expect him to hit the under, considering the fact that he's averaging 4.3 over the last 3 games could make us potentially a little bit hesitant to take that bet. So even if we're not getting good value with the over or with the under, well, the over is exceedingly unlikely to happen considering he's not averaging that on the season or in the past few few games, it's only locked in at plus 110, and the under is locked in at minus 134. I don't expect him to hit 4.5 or get 4.5 rebounds in this game, but minus 134 is not good enough value. One bet for Paul Millsap that I love. I told people to bet on this last game. I tell people to bet on this for Paul Millsap every game. When I talk about his individual stats being broken in terms of the betting card, this is the one that is the most broken by far. Paul Millsap is averaging 1.5 threes on this season, and he's locked in at an over-under of 1.5 threes in this game. The reason it's so broken, the under is set at minus 245, whereas the over is set at plus 195. You're getting such better value with the over than the under for pretty much no reason. He's averaging 1.5 on the season. That's exactly the mark that he's projected at. So, well, it's like kind of a 50-50 potentially whether he hits the over or the under. The value doesn't remotely reflect that. At plus 195 for the over, I think you have to take that, especially considering the fact that he's averaging 1.7 threes over the last 3 games. No, he's not. He's averaging 2 threes over the last 3 games. He's hit the mark. He's hit the 1.5 mark in each of the last 3 games. I think this is one of my favorite bets across the card, and I highly advocate that somebody, invest in this. Now, Nikola Jokic is set at 23.5 points in this game. On the season, he's averaging 24.2. In the last 3, he's averaging 22.6. If I had to bet, I would say the over, but it's kind of a toss-up, and I don't love the value either way with the over at minus 106 and the under at minus 115. I would stay away from that one. Now, one bet that I do like, even though you're not getting great or a super high reward, is Nikola Jokic to hit more than 7.5 assists. He is averaging 10.4 assists on the season, so he's way above that. And yes, he's been trending down a little bit as of late, but he's still averaging 8.7 over the last 3 games, and they haven't needed to play him as hard considering the fact that they played against the Knicks. He was able to rest a lot in that game, and they played the Sixers, I will say a banged up Sixers squad, so he was able to rest a lot in that game as well. So, well, we can expect the over. The over is only set at minus 139. I don't think that it's terrible value on something that we can be very confident in. That's a good bet. In terms of rebounds, he's set at 9.5 rebounds in this game. On the season, he's averaging 11.2. In the last 3, he's averaging 10.6. Even better than assists, we can be confident that he's going to get more than 9.5 rebounds, considering the fact that his rebounds really haven't been trending down like his assists have. You're also getting slightly better value than the assist bet that I previously mentioned at minus 134. Now let's talk about Nikola Jokic three-pointers. He's averaging 1.2 on the season, 0.7 in the last 3 games. He's set at 1.5 in this game. For whatever reason, you're getting better value if you bet on Paul Millsap to get more than 1.5 three-pointers than Nikola Jokic. And Nikola Jokic is averaging 1.2 on the season. Paul Millsap's averaging 1.5. I can't understand it. You guys should take advantage of it. You're kind of getting good value with the Nikola Jokic at the over at plus 150, but I wouldn't expect him to hit the over on three-pointers in this game. I would stay away from this one, especially considering the fact that the value on the under is terrible at minus 186. Now let's talk about the Jazz side of the ball. Star Donovan Mitchell, Spida Mitchell. He's projected 23.5 points in this game. On the season, he's averaging 23.6, and he's averaging 27 over the last 3 games. What does that mean? That means you can expect him to hit the over considering his season average and the fact that he's hit the over on that mark in each of the last 3 games. You're also not getting terrible value with the over at minus 125 versus plus 104 for the under. I like Donovan Mitchell on the over there. Now, one I would stay away from is him in the assists category. I think he will get the under on assists set at 5.5. On the season, he's averaging 4.8. In the last 3 games, he's averaging 3.7. So while we can be fairly confident that he's going to get under 4.5 or 5.5 assists in this game, the under set at minus 152. That is terrible value. We can stay away from that. Now let's look at Donovan Mitchell rebounds. This is a bet that I do in fact like. On the season, he's averaging 3.5 rebounds, which is coincidentally exactly what his over-under mark is for this game. So while it would be kind of a toss-up, then you could just defer to whichever one has better value. The over is at minus 134, the under is at plus 110. So while it's kind of a toss-up as to whether or not he will get over 3 or 4 rebounds or less in this game, there is way better value on the under. Another stat that kind of confirms that thought process is the fact that he's only secured 2.7 rebounds in each of the last 3 games. That is really low for him. That is really low for any guard of his athletic capacity, but that only tells us to further invest in the under. Now let's look at Donovan Mitchell 3 3-pointers in this game. He has the highest amount of 3-pointers projected in this game at 3.5. And let me tell you, he has been tearing it up from the 3-point line. He has He has made over 50% of his 3-pointers in the last 3 games, and he's hit he's averaging 5 3-pointers in his last 3 games. On the season, he's averaging 3.6. So everything about that tells us to take the over on Donovan Mitchell at 3-pointers at 3.5, and you're getting better value than the under at plus 118 versus minus 143. I have no idea why why the odds look like that, but we should take advantage of the fact that it's kind of silly that the over is better value considering we can even expect him to get the over in this game. Let's look at some of the other bets I like, as Donovan Mitchell was the star. One bet I like is Mike Conley to secure more than 3.5 rebounds in this game. On the season, he's averaging 4.3 rebounds, and in the last 3 games, he's averaging 5 rebounds per game. Just like the Donovan Mitchell 3-pointer thing that I was just talking about, this is also ludicrous. We can expect him to easily get more than 3.5 rebounds in this game, and you're getting better value at plus 115 for the over than minus 139 for the for the under. You can take the over on Mike Conley at 3.53s, locked in at plus 115. Now, another one that I like is we'll skip over Royce O'Neal. I don't love any of his projections in this game, but I like Bojan Bogdanovic to secure at least 3.5 rebounds, just like Mike Conley, in this game as well. And all the numbers, just like Mike Conley, tell us to go this way. Well, Mike Conley, you're getting better value, and he's averaging a little bit better on the season. He's averaging 4.3 rebounds, whereas Bojan's only averaging 3.6. He's averaging 5 in the last 3, whereas Bojan's only averaging 3.7 in the last 3. You're still getting good value, and we can expect the over here at plus 106. Rather than betting a little bit on Mike Conley and a little bit on Bojan, I would advise that you bet all of that on Mike Conley, but I'd say it'd be stupid to report or not to report the fact that Bojan's value is still pretty good there at plus 106. Another one that I like is Rudy Gobert to be under 12.5 points in this game. He's only averaging 11.9 on the season, and he's been playing pretty bad over the last 3 games. He's only averaging 7.8 points over the last 3 games. That means we can expect the under pretty confidently at 12.5. In addition, you're getting better value with the under at plus 106 versus minus 129. I would bet the under on Rudy Gobert threes. Another one worth looking at is Jordan Clarkson. He's the leading candidate for 6th man of the year, and while he doesn't get so many counting stats, he has been killing it in the points category. He's set at 16.5 points in this game in true pick'em fashion, minus 110 for the over, minus 110 for the under. He is averaging 17.1 on the season, and he's averaging 18.3 over the last 3 games. So we can expect him to hit the over, and the value on the over is no worse than the value on the under. This is a bet that I wouldn't stray away from either. Now let's talk about some of the player specials that we like. Again, I'll talk about all of the Nuggets, and then I'll only highlight the ones on the Jazz side of the ball that I like. So Jamal Murray is set at 30.5 combined points, assists, and rebounds in this game. I would normally say the under, considering the fact that he's only averaging 28 total on the season and only 22.6. He's trending down significantly, despite the fact that he started the season super slow. He's only averaging 22.6 over the last 3. Again, he's set at 30.5 in this game. I would normally take the under, but the under value is minus 139. So I wouldn't, I don't love the value there. It's not the worst bet of all time, however. Now, Paul Millsap, I do like. You're getting better value, and this is something that we can be equally as confident in. He's set at 14.5, and I like the over, locked in at minus 121. Over the season, he's averaging 15.5 combined counting stats and 16.7 over the last 3 games. So not only is he trending up, he averages more than this mark of 14.5 on the season. I like the over at minus 121. That is not terrible value. Same concept applies to Nikola Jokic. I like the over at 41.5, but the value is only minus 117 versus minus 105 for the under. The logic being that over the last 3 games, Nikola Jokic is trending down a little bit, but he's still averaging more than that mark at 41.9. And on the season, he's averaging 45.8. This is a safe bet, and it's not so low reward that it is totally worth taking. On the Jazz side of the ball, I like Mike Conley's player stats. I like him to get a combined points, assists, and rebounds of 25.5 points in this game. Why? You're getting barely worse value with the over than the under, and especially considering the fact that he's averaging 27.1 on the season and 27.6 over the last 3 games, we can expect him to get over that mark of 25.5, and the value on the over is only minus 114 versus minus 107. That the values there are not reflected like they should be. Let's take advantage of that. Now, another one that I like is Bojan Bogdanovic. He's set at 19.5 combined points, assists, and rebounds in this game. Let me tell you why I like the under. Well, he is averaging more than that in the past 3 games at 20.1. That is a very slim margin. Over the course of the season, he's averaging less than that on a larger margin than he's averaging more than that over the past 3 games. On the season, he's only averaging 18.4 combined points, assists, and rebounds. So, while he has done it as of late, we might be able to expect him to do the under, considering that razor thin margin that is the over on the last 3 games. Not only that, you're getting pretty good value at the under at plus 100 versus minus 121 for the under. If someone were holding a gun to my head and, regardless of value, I would say he hits under this mark anyway, and you're getting better value with the under. That's a bet that I like. Now, finally, the last player special that is worth highlighting is Jordan Clarkson. He's set at 22.5 combined points, assists, and rebounds in this game. This is also in true pick'em fashion, just like his points at minus 110 for the over, minus 110 for the under. Over the season, he's averaging over this at 23.7, and he's been crushing it the last 3 games. Over the last 3 games, he's averaging 27.3 combined points, assists, and rebounds. So not only can we expect him to hit the over, you're getting the same value on the over as you are on the under. This is another bet that I like. Let's talk double-double threats. Let's talk triple-double threats after that. In terms of double-doubles, here's a bet that I like that's not on the Nuggets side of the ball. Rudy Gobert is set at minus 155 to get a double-double in this game, and plus 126 to not get a double-double in this game. Now, Rudy Gobert is averaging a double-double on this season, but there have been a few games where he has not hit that mark. I would expect him to hit it, but you're getting good enough value on the under that I wouldn't advise anyone stay away from the under, or from the fact that he doesn't get the double-double. If he doesn't get the double-double, you're locked in at plus 126. And again, over the last 3 games, he's averaging less than 8 points per game. I don't dislike that bet, especially considering the value at plus 126. Now, I usually don't talk about Jokic's odds to get a double-double because, he gets a double-double every game, and you're not getting great value if you were to bet on a Jokic double-double. But I did some math, and it's absolutely worth it. Let me tell you why. If you bet on Jokic to get a double-double, you're locked in at minus 225. If you say he doesn't get a double-double, you're locked in at plus 180. Where they pulled those numbers from, I have no idea. He's gotten a double-double in 12 out of 12 games this season. Well, it is, pretty low risk. It's pretty low reward. It's even lower risk than it is low reward. If you have a lot of money and you want an absolutely safe bet, I would bet Nikola Jokic to get a double-double. I think he gets a double-double barring, the fact, if the game gets completely away from the Nuggets or the Jazz and he barely needs to play in the second half, that might prevent him from getting a double-double, but he still could. And barring an injury, I absolutely foresee him getting a double-double in the season. Again, he's done it 12 out of 12 games, and at minus 225, sure, that's low reward, but the value is still absolutely there. Now let's talk triple-double. I like the value for him to get a triple-double as well. Locked in at plus 315 for Nikola Jokic to get a triple-double. I think that's also broken, and I don't know why Vegas hasn't really accounted for the fact that he is a triple-double threat every game, each game in and out. He's gotten 5. He leads the league in triple-doubles with 5 triple-doubles on the season. That means he's gotten a triple-double in about approximately 1 out of every 3.15 games this season, or 1 out of every 2.4 games this season. That means we would want to take this Jokic triple-double bet if it were as low as plus 240, considering the likelihood that he's been getting triple-doubles on the season. But you're getting way better value than that at plus 315. The value is absolutely there, and sure, it's slightly unlikely that he gets a triple-double. Again, he's only been doing it 1 out of every 2.4 games this season. It's still technically slightly unlikely, but the value there is way too hard to pass up. I would advise that you bet on a Nikola Jokic triple-double. Now let's talk about our tip-off analysis, but first let's dive into the implications of why we do it. The reason we bet, or we talk about the tip-off analysis, the reason we analyze who we think will win the tip-off on the Denver dollar is because it gives us pretty good insight on some bets that people usually stay away from. And it gives us, there's a big money-making opportunity just based on this, play that happens within 1 second of the game. Now, the reason I say that is because one bet that is considered kind of random that people stay away from is which team will score first. But if we can predict accurately or remotely accurately who will win the tip-off, we will have every advantage in terms of guessing which team will score first, because obviously the team who has the first possession will have every advantage to score first in any given game. Now, in addition to that, if we want to, get kind of fun with it, we could even bet which player on that team that we think will score first will score first. And that's going to be even a larger payout. It's a little bit riskier, obviously, because there are 10 guys on the court. Anyone can score the first. Even if we predict one team to score first, the other team can get a steal, or the other team, the team that wins the tip-off can miss a shot, and the other team can take it down and score. So it is a little bit higher risk than the other one, but it is still worth it if we do some math, and let me explain why. But first, actually, I'm going to talk about who I think will win this tip between Nikola Jokic and Rudy Gobert of the Utah Jazz. I think Rudy Gobert will win this tip, and why do I think that? I'm going to point back to the series of last year in which the Jazz took us to 7 games in the playoffs. Yes, the Nuggets did win that series, but one of those games went to overtime. So not only were there 7 tip-offs in that game, there were 8 considering the one that went to overtime. That's a pretty decent sample size between 2 players, and that's a pretty decent sample size. That's a pretty decent sample size between 2 players, and we can be confident in the fact that Rudy Gobert will win, considering he dominated that matchup last year. He won 6 out of the 8 tip-offs in the series last year. That's a 75% rate of winning the tip-off, so we can easily lean towards Rudy Gobert to win the tip-off. The reason why that's important is because the Nuggets and the Jazz are set at both minus 110 for which team will score first. That's true pick'em fashion, and we can confidently predict that the Jazz will have the ball first. I would absolutely bet on the Jazz to score first in this game at minus 110. But I'm going to take it one further. Let's talk about which individual players we expect to score first. Now, Rudy Gobert is not scoring that much, and especially over the last 3 games, like I said, averaging under 8 points per game. He's been really struggling. I would not include him I would not bet on him in terms of which player to score first. Same goes for Royce Freeman. He's only averaging 4 points per game over the last 3 games. Both of them are starters, and both of them are pretty much non-scoring threats, so we can go away from those guys. That means if we are as confident in the Jazz to score first as we are in this game, we can bet on all 3 of Donovan Mitchell, Bojan Bogdanovic, and Mike Conley to score the first basket in this game and still be in the plus pretty significantly, in fact. If we bet $10 on each of them, well, let's talk about their numbers first. Donovan Mitchell is set at plus 500, Bojan Bogdanovic is set at plus 750, and Mike Conley is set at plus 850. That means if we bet $10 on each of them, no matter who scores first of those 3, if one of them does, which we can be kind of fairly confident in, we're getting good payout. Let me explain why. If we bet $10 on each of them, that's a $30 investment. If Donovan Mitchell scores first, we're walking away with $60 minus $30 of the initial investment. That's a $30 net gain. That's equivalent to a bet of plus 100 if Donovan Mitchell scores first. But if he doesn't score first and it's Bojan Bogdanovic or Mike Conley, then we're getting a significantly better payout. Again, with that initial $30 investment, if Bojan scores first, we'd be walking away with $85. That's a $55 net gain, and that's equivalent to a plus 183.3 bet. Same goes for Mike Conley. If you bet $30 on $10 on each player, if Mike Conley scores first, you'd be walking away with $95. That's a net gain of $65, and that's equivalent to a bet of plus 216.7. So if any of those guys score first, you're going to be in the money, and you're going to be in the money pretty significantly. I like the idea to bet on all 3 of those guys to score first. Now, if you've been listening, don't forget, tell your friends, tell everyone you know who is interested in sports or sports betting. Well, my cup of tea isn't necessarily making such predictions. It's not so much, doing so much player analysis and talking about, really the nitty-gritty things. I am a numbers guy. I'm a math major. What I can help you do and what I excel at is finding the value on the scorecard. So, across you heard me today. I said, well, it's kind of a toss-up whether or not Paul Millsap will make more than 1.5 threes in this game. I told you can't ignore the value, and that's a bet that you almost borderline have to take. That's what I'm good at, finding the value on the scorecard. If you start listening to me more consistently, you will find out. So don't forget to like and subscribe, comment any of your individual picks below, and we'll see how the game plays out against the Jazz tonight. Thank you so much for listening. Don't forget to listen tomorrow.